Great, fantastic. All right, let me ask you some questions about this. This is really a phenomenal book. I've got 9 pages of synopsis here and 9 pages of questions. So we're going to take this through Sunday morning. If you'll just have a seat. I've got a lot of questions to ask. Let me start with an analogy, though, because in this book, you talk about, it reminded me of a sermon I did once when I called it, "The Good Life's Not Good Enough."
Yes, I love that sermon. I read about that. When
yeah.
you talked about, it's not just about how good we look and how good
Exactly,
we feel and whether we have the goods. Am I quoting you
No,
accurately?
you got it. I said you could be, you have got a brilliant memory. Looking good, feeling good, having the goods, but still feeling unsatisfied. Now, Arianna, in this book, you talk pretty eloquently about developing habits to get back. Can you talk to us about habits a minute and the importance of doing these, this third metric of well-being, wisdom, wonder, and giving? Talk to me about habits, because I believe in this.
So, you know, we all have habits, and there is that term of the keystone habit.
Keystone habits. Yeah.
Like, what is the one habit that you can change first that can make it easier to change all the other habits? For me, after my wake-up call, my keystone habit was sleep.
Sleep.
I went from 4 to 5 hours to 7 to 8, and it was pretty transformational. That made it easier for me to change other habits. For other people, it can be beginning to give something. Let me give you an example. I had a close friend of mine who lost her job during the financial meltdown. And she was devastated because she had never not had a job. So she could not imagine herself without a job. So I said, well, you know, now that you don't have a job and you're spending your time looking, you have some time to volunteer, I said. So I was on the board of a place called Home in South Central LA that works with underprivileged kids. I said, why don't you go there? And I think it will put your problems in perspective. It will help others. And I said, I think you'll find a job faster, too. So first of all, she thought I was heartless. You know, that was not understanding, you know, how hard this was for her. But she did it. And it was transformational. It was a new habit of not just thinking about herself and how awful the world was because she lost her job. And she told me that one story, which is that they were doing this circle where they would sit around the circle forgiving. And she said, I forgave my daughter for forgetting my birthday. And the girl next to me forgave her father for killing her mother.
Wow.
And so I think habits that also can help us worry less. You know, when you say worry, when you worry, you know, somehow you've taken your mind off what God is doing for you, and you think it's all what you are doing. So I think anything we can do, that's another big habit that I recommend how to changing our, what I call our negative fantasies about the future. You know, Montaigne said, there were many terrible things in my life, but most of them never happened.
Well, I love this. Okay, the keystone habit for you was actually sleep. Actually, it was for me, too, in the Daniel Plan. The exact same thing. In fact, we started, the Daniel Plan was part of a thing we're calling Decade of Destiny here at Saddleback, where we're looking at 7 key areas of life. Your spiritual health, your emotional health, your mental health, your physical health, your relational health, your vocational health, and your financial health. 7 areas of health. Now, you'd think that a church would start with spiritual, but actually we didn't. We started with physical health. And the reason we start with physical, not spiritual, is because it's more basic and more biological. And I've been trying to help people change, of course, my entire life. And most people say, I'd really like to work on my marriage. I'd like to work on my job. I'd like to work on all these relationships. I'd like to work. But what happens? I come home at night and I'm worn out. So I flop down on the couch and watch TV, go to bed, and then get up the next morning. And I just thought, if I could get people's energy levels up, then maybe we could work on some of these other areas. Does that make sense? So actually, we are, you know, working on physical first before we work on spiritual, emotional, relational, and all those other things. And this is exactly what you're saying.
I really believe that. And then also, it makes it easier not to internalize stress. And for each person, it will be something different. That's why I think the addiction to technology is a big problem when it comes to both sleep and finding quiet time for ourselves to pray, to meditate, whatever each one
You
has
talked
as a
about the
practice.
ever-increasing creep of technology.
Yes, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think I worry about children who get their iPads at the age of 2.
Yeah. They're the new babysitters.
The new babysitters.
I was going through the airport yesterday. I was in Tulsa, and there was a guy sitting there with 3 kids. Every kid had a screen, and none of them were 4 years old.
Yes.
And I'm going, well, that's one way to keep them happy. But what are you doing to the neural networks that's teaching you those things? This is an interesting quote. The function of leadership is to be able to see the iceberg before it hits the Titanic. You mentioned that. Talk about that.
Yes, you know, let me give you an example. Erin Callan was the chief financial officer of Lehman Brothers, you know, before it went bankrupt.
Right.
And she wrote in an op-ed how she was completely burnt out. She was working around the clock. She destroyed her marriage, destroyed her relationships. And I thought to myself, the one thing she didn't say is that she also did not see the iceberg about to hit Lehman Brothers.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe if they had all gotten 8 hours sleep, they would have woken up and said, you know, there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
How come, if you look at the financial meltdown or any other of our political crises, how come all these smart people are missing out on what's actually Exxon Valdez, the Challenger,
all of those sleep
these
deprivation accidents.
are very connected with that.
You know, another interesting thing, because you talked about there is no work-life balance, there's just life. We'll talk about that for a minute.
Yes, you know, we have one life, and can we be awake for it? And, and integrate it all. And if we're lucky to love our work, as we do, and I'm sure you do, then the question is, I mean, what you said earlier, really, it's about rejuvenation and renewal. That is key. It's like healing is when the repair process is ahead of the damage process. Every day we have both. And then we are more clear. We can make better decisions. We can see both the icebergs and the opportunities.
You know, there's another analogy there on the Titanic, and that is the Titanic was supposed to be the first unsinkable ship because it was the first ship to actually compartmentalize the hull. And the theory was we could hit an iceberg and actually take on water in a certain percentage, but it wouldn't sink the ship. It's kind of like a submarine that you could batten down the hatches, take on water in certain. The problem with that theory, of course it's good, but the bottom line is a hole in the boat's a hole in the boat, it's a hole in the boat. And if you and I are sitting in a rowboat and I start drilling a hole at one end, and you start, what are you doing? I said, well, it's just my life. It doesn't bother you. Well, it's going to take us both down. And the Titanic myth is that I can compartmentalize my life and I can be messed up in one area and it won't affect everything else. It's nonsense. It's nonsense because it's your whole life. And if you've taken on water, if you say, this is my spiritual life, this is my emotional life, this is my mental life, my physical life, this is my career life, this is my golf life, this is my social life, this is my secret life. Well, the bottom line is you can't compartmentalize your life. That just causes more stress.
And also because, and modern science is validating that all spiritual belief, life proceeds from inside out. You know, we sort of have been acting on the belief that life proceeds from the outside in, but it doesn't. It's a huge revolution, really. I mean, I know you've been preaching this for years, so it's no news to you, but it's a little bit like, you know, we've been living in a pre-Copernican world where the equivalent of the world is flat, is that the human beings are purely material beings. And now modern science is proving unequivocally this is not true. That who we are is way beyond our bodies. You know, we have this amazing evidence of the mind and the spirit healing the body. And we see that again and again. We have MRIs to prove what's happening in the brain. That's why, again, I have so much scientific evidence in the book. I really want to convince all the skeptics that the most important exploration now is of that inner being.
You know, I was one time speaking at the TED conference, and somebody asked me, actually it was, I don't remember the guy's name, but, Peter Thiel. And he said, will computers ever need religion? And I said, well, no. But I said, I have no doubt the computers are going to get smarter. They're going to be smarter than us, okay? But the fact is, you're far more than intelligence. The human being is far more than intelligence. And it's those other parts of you. Now, you said here, the most effective way to operate at work is like a sprinter. Talk about that.
Yes, you know, the point about work is that was my mistake. You can't just keep going, and think this is it. It's endless. So it has to be sprinting, renewing, sprinting, renewing. It's a dance.
It's a dance.
And when we find the joy in the dance, then we can tap into that childlike creativity that you talked about earlier. And that can be transformational.
You know, rest and this restoration is so important. God put it in the Big Ten. It's in the 10 Commandments. It's right up there with don't commit adultery and don't murder. It also says every 6 days you take a day off.
Yes.
Rest your body, rejuvenate your soul, recharge your emotions, rebuild your relationships. The Sabbath, Jesus said, is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. It's for your benefit, so you don't wear out. And that sprint is there's a period. It's not like you just keep, if you're burning the candle at both ends, you're not as bright as you think you are.
Yes, yes.
And you can get so many irons in the fire, you put out the fire.
And that's where we need to change business culture. Because you go to so many corporations and they reward people for working 24/7. You know, we need to realize we don't pay people for their stamina. We pay them for their judgment. And at the Huffington Post...
That's a good line. Write that one down. We don't pay people for their stamina. We pay them for their judgment. And if you're burning out, you don't have good judgment.
And now I think there are corporations, 35% of American small and medium-sized businesses now are beginning to introduce some form of mindfulness program, awareness of the health of their employees. We're spending $300 billion as businesses because of stress.
Yeah. Now talk about that, because you used the word mindfulness and heartfulness, which I'd never heard before until I read your book. Explain those concepts, mindfulness and heartfulness.
You know, mindfulness doesn't just mean the mind, because in the East, the word mind and heart is the same.
It's your soul.
It's the soul. It's really soulfulness. I mean, I much prefer, I personally love the word soul. And my favorite...
I like soul food.
Yes, soul food. It's not, soul food is not on the Daniel plan.
Yeah, you're right. That gravy, oh baby, oh baby, oh baby.
Yes. These amazing biscuits, right?
Oh, you're killing me.
There's a place for that. We're not talking about giving all that up.
Right.
Just putting it in its place, right?
Right. Exactly.
Like every night.
Everything in moderation.
So yes, mindfulness is really, you know, every generation comes up with its own words, but it's all the same thing. You know, Goethe said, this life, gentlemen, is too short for our souls. You know, we need something bigger. And how do we tap into it?
You said the common warning sign that we're on overload, that we're on burnout, you gave an acrostic called HALT.
Yes.
And it was hunger, anger, lonely, and tired.
Yeah, that's HALT. That's a sign. You know, we are ignoring the signs that we are getting from ourselves to halt. And if we really begin to monitor ourselves better, we will course correct faster. You know, we created an app which is free. You can download it.
Oh, it's technology.
Yes, that's the paradox. There is now, I have like all these appendices of technology that can help you disconnect from technology. You know, the most popular new feature that Apple launched was a feature called Do Not Disturb that blocks all your incoming messages. That's how weak we are. We have to have an app help us. Anyway, our app is called GPS for the Soul.
Oh, I love that.
And basically, it gives you a proxy of your stress level, and then you create a personal guide that helps you course correct. You know, it has like pictures, in my case, it has pictures of my children when they were young and unproblematic a long time ago. It has, you know, my favorite music, landscapes, and it's under a minute. And again, we have evidence that shows that just playing that can calm us.
During the day.
During the day, anytime you feel stress, anytime you have that halt message, just play it. It's under a minute, and then you can course correct. We have this incredible capacity to course correct if we don't let it really accumulate.
Often, because like if you're going to the moon and you're course correcting by the millisecond, because if you get off, you're going to miss it by 100,000 miles by the time you get there. You know, I have a little saying that I teach leaders, and it says, divert daily, withdraw weekly, abandon annually. Divert daily means every day you find those things that replenish you. Okay, divert daily. When my kids were little, I used to keep a giant milk can, a dairy can, at my front door. And when I'd come home at night, I would pause at the front door and I'd say, okay, God, I'm going to drop all my worries in this can. I'm not taking them in and loading them on my wife and kids. I'm going to drop them right. They'll be here tomorrow morning when I come out the door, and I can pick them up. But I would do that. So you divert daily. And when my kids were little, one of the things we would do is wrestle. They were the powerful PKs, pastor's kids. It was tag team wrestling versus against pastor of the universe. And we would wrestle. And if I could pin both of them at once, both of the boys, they had to quote a Bible verse. If they pinned me, they could take an offering. But divert daily. You got to know what, shoot some hoops, play the piano. I actually garden. I grow about 50 kinds of vegetables. I've discovered if you work with your mind, you rest with your hands. Okay? Now, if you work with your hands, you probably ought to rest with your mind. For instance, if I'm a mechanic or carpenter, I probably need to come home and read a book. Okay? But I don't need to read a book because I'm reading books all the time. I need to come home and do something. Exactly. So you divert daily, then you withdraw weekly, you take a day off every week, and don't call it your day off, call it your Sabbath, because you'll cheat on your day off. Okay? And my Sabbath is Monday, because obviously Saturday and Sunday are work days for me. But you rest and you restore, and then abandon annually. You go away once a year, and you don't take your cell phone and you don't take your laptop. You totally unplug.
I love that.
Very important.
I also love what you said earlier about eliminate.
Yeah.
Because I did that when I was 40. I made a list of all the things that, we tell ourselves, one day I'm going to do this. So someday, in my case, my list included, I'm going to learn to cook. I don't know how to cook. I'm going to learn to become a good skier. Just a long list. And so I realized that I'm never going to really do these things. So I came up with this line that you can complete a project by dropping it.
I love that. That's brilliant. Write that down. Tweet that, okay? Okay, tweet that. You can complete a project by dropping it.
So that's part of what you were talking earlier about eliminate.
Right. Yeah. All right, last question. You talked about, we'll let you comment on this, mastering the art of slowing down doesn't happen quickly.
Yes.
So give these guys some encouragement on this.
Yes, this is about being patient with ourselves and compassionate with ourselves. We want to chart a new path forward. We're among the pioneers who want to help the culture chart a new path forward, come forward with new values that, again, have been very ancient. We are not inventing anything, but we are applying it. And for me, the biggest failure of this book would be if people finished it and said, I agree with you, but didn't change anything. I want to see it as a bridge to help us make the changes we want, to lead lives of more significance, more purpose, more joy, and more giving to others. And that's why, I want giving to be a big part of everything I do as the book comes out at the end of the month. That's why I made I made this partnership with Donors Choose. Donors Choose, that they work with thousands of underprivileged classrooms across America, and you can go and pick things to give to the teachers that don't have things for their students. And anybody who buys a book gets the full price back to donate to Donors Choose. Because I wanted to really see how can we make giving God knows, you've done reverse tithing. So you are a master of that. But it's such an important part of our lives. And then we feel more abundant. If I can end with that, because that was a big realization for me. That why is it that when we give, it's when we feel the most abundant? And I realize it's because however successful we are, anytime we are going for the next goal, whether it's personal or business, we are operating from a little bit of lack. We are trying to get something we don't have. But when we're giving, no matter how little we have, we are operating from abundance. And that feeling of abundance is really, I think, how God intended us to be, because it feels so wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's why now they have the scientific evidence that giving is one of the greatest shortcuts to well-being.
And it's good for your health.
It's good for your health.
Yeah, it is. Did you enjoy this? That's great. Fantastic.